Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and particularly coming here too. I can't believe the change of venue at the last minute. Believe it or not, the Cyclone Alfred is still hanging about in some way. I'm sure everyone's sick to death of hearing about it. Just a really quick note, we've turned the aircon off because it was getting a bit chilly. So just raise your hand or gesture at the aircon if it's starting to get a bit too hot in here as well. We can turn it back on. Yes? Straight back on? Okay. Signal if it gets too chilly again. Just the curtain. Do you want me to close?
Well, just
Yeah. Just ask Matt. Hey, Matt, could you shut the curtain? The back. Yeah, thanks. Only very quickly before we begin, toilets, if you're not sure, just out the curtain, outside, follow the bar around. It's right there on the corner. And if there's an emergency, run or just go outside the front door here. Now, before I introduce my lovely co-presenters here, let me just see if I can get this working. I want everyone to picture this. Okay, I want you to imagine that you've been visiting a really close friend, could be a family member. They've been living in a retirement villa for quite some time now. They're single, but very independent, very physically and mentally capable. You arrive there, like your many regular visits, only to find a pile of mail at the front door. A bit strange, so you knock on the door, no answer. The concern at this point is obviously starting to heighten a little bit. So you take a peek through the window and it's clear no one is home. You do the next logical thing, ring up the retirement villa and sure enough find out that your friend or family member has ended up having a fall and was sent to the hospital. Now, this is a true story. In fact, it happened to Rachel over here, the principal advisor here at Your Wealth Consultants. And the story actually doesn't end there. So we contacted the power of attorney, in this case, our client's niece. The niece, busy with starting a new job on her own and managing her family, scrambling around and actually found a home for her auntie. In the midst of all of this, the niece herself had a medical emergency and had to go to hospital, induced coma, so she was out of action for at least 3 months. Now, I don't say this to scare or to shock, but it is a common, and it's almost like when things will go wrong, they will go wrong. And how can we prepare? How can we plan when life throws its ups and downs? That's why we're here today. So I want to introduce the co-presenters I have with me tonight, Savannah from Retirement Care Solutions.
Hello.
And Kimberly from McCarthy Jury Lawyers. Now, a bit about myself. I'm a proud husband to my wife and father of 2 young boys. I promise I wasn't under duress when I wrote this. And I've got a bit of experience in the retirement and aged care space. I'm also accredited to do aged care advice. It's actually a very niche area, so not all advisors can touch it. I'll hand over the mic now to Kimberly to just introduce yourself.
I'm very loud, so I always hate a microphone in case I'm too loud for everybody. I'm an estate planning and administration lawyer, so I do estate planning, the wills, powers of attorney, etc., and then administer estates when people pass away. I've got a little bit of experience, and I said I own a 6-year-old because I feel like at times a 6-year-old is definitely just a bit crazy, and the benefit of being here tonight is I don't have to deal with him, his father does, so that's me.
Hello, I'm Savannah and I'm the founder of Retirement Care Solutions, and we've been running nearly 10 years. I've been a local of Bayside, not necessarily winner, but down at Redland Bay for the last nearly 30 years. I'm a recent Gigi, or a grandmother of 3 months. Very exciting. 12 years experience as a retirement living and aged care specialist, and over 15 years as a licensed real estate agent. And that does allow me to guide families looking for the right solutions for their loved ones.
Perfect. Of course, quick disclaimer, this is my get out of jail free card for the evening, but this is only general advice. So if you are thinking of acting on any information you hear tonight, just please take that into consideration, that we've not considered your personal circumstances, and it's always best to reach out for chat going forward. Another real interesting note is tonight we're not touching on the home care side of aged care, we're touching on the residential side. Just an important distinction there. I want to get everyone involved with a quick quiz, fact or fallacy. A quick show of hands, raise your hands if true. Going into aged care means you will keep your age pension or pensioner card. So hands up if you think that's true. True. Correct, it is true. Going into care means I have to sell the family home. Have to sell the family home. So show of hands if true. Great, it's false. You don't have to sell the family home. I've heard I can gift all of my assets to my spouse or a child. Or if we flip this, maybe if you're the child, I've heard that my parent can gift me all the assets to maximize Centrelink aged care benefits. Hand for true, keep it down for false.
I'm so excited to see that.
Yeah, that's so good.
We're not going to be able to teach you guys anything.
I'm so excited to see that. You're doing a great job, Kurt.
Of course, so apart from the $10,000 gifting limits each year, $30,000 capped over a rolling 5-year period, it's false. I've heard it's best to transfer the title of my home before going into care. Raise your hand for true. Great, it's false.
I know.
Next time, hard question.
Yeah.
Is an aged care home my only option? I love to see this. Everyone's got their hands down. It's not your only option. In fact, the government are incentivizing you to age in place. It's part of their kind of policy measures. And I'll hand this last one over to the specialist in the field.
Okay, an attorney can sign property transfer sale documents. True or false?
A what?
So if an attorney needs to sell your property, can they sign the transfer and the sale document?
Are you talking about an enduring power of attorney?
Yes. Well,
so
it could be either.
Yeah,
It could be
yeah.
an enduring power, under an enduring power of attorney. Don't be afraid.
Does it depend on whether they've got capacity to make their own decisions or not?
No, not always. So I love the fact that you're hesitant because this is a bit of a trick question. So it's a yes, but. So this is a very typical, this is why I had to put in a lawyer one, right? There's a question, right? So quite often you will have the situation where somebody lacks capacity, so the ability to make their own decisions, and the attorney under an enduring power of attorney has got to sell the family home to fund them going into care. And so that person needs to be able to sign the property transfer documents and the sale documents. But here's the kicker. To be able to sign those documents, the power of attorney needs to be registered with the titles office. And why I added this question in is that nobody or rarely we find people know this. And what we get is a phone call really late in a 30-day settlement. Oh, someone's just told me that I have to have this power of attorney registered
Form
before.
16.
Can we do that? And
I'm a real estate, but
settlement
no.
is next
No.
Monday. So this is one that I thought I'd add as a bit of a, if you take something away, that's one of the things to take away. And I'll give you another hint about power of attorneys when I talk later.
Yep, perfect. That's so interesting. These are some of the questions we're hoping to address, kind of the topics and the areas that we're going to get into tonight. But let's start at the beginning. I'll hand this one over to Savannah.
Okay. All right. So, what are the signs my loved one show when they may need help? Have you had a loved one? Have any of you had a loved one go into aged care? Yeah. Did you find it was through a crisis, or you were observant that there were signs and you made a proactive choice about it? Yeah. I would say probably 90% of our clients that come to us are in hospital with only a few days before they're going to get kicked out. So we thought this was rather poignant because for most people, there are numerous signs leading up to that crisis. So if you're proactive, you could avoid the crisis or have some backup. So some of the signs are the decline in their physical health. If you notice they're socially withdrawing, so, you know, you've got a loved one that normally goes out and, I was going to say entertain, but they normally go out to the shops, catch up with friends, but they're becoming more reclusive. That their home is becoming too hard to manage. Their cognitive is declining. Emotional changes, and this can be through the loss of a spouse or a family member. That as an enduring power of attorney, you are now looking after their financials and they're no longer able to pay their own bills and maintain their finances. Carers burnout. We see this very often where you are running around your loved one 24/7. And quite often the spouses, if they're not careful, could end up in care before their loved one that needs to go to care enters. And personal appearance and hygiene. This is something that was really noticeable, particularly with my mum. She's passed away now, but what I found was every time I visited her every few days, she was wearing the same clothes. And this was a woman that was always immaculate, makeup, fresh clothes, but was wearing the same clothes because she'd forgotten that she'd already worn them. And I was noticing that she was starting to wear clothes that were stained. So they're just little things to be mindful. You know, even the home, if someone was immaculate in keeping their home looking pristine and now it's not like that, there's something. So it's just looking for those signs that can lead to a possible crisis, and it's averting it before it gets to that stage. Oh, no, it's not me.
Okay, so this one I think is clear. So it's looking at who the clear or the key decision makers are for different people. So it's making sure that powers of attorney are reviewed. So more and more we're getting clients come to us after someone's lost capacity and they've got an enduring power of attorney and they need to get it registered to do that transfer to get them in the home. And then you pick up the enduring power of attorney and there's a problem with it. And so more and more I'm telling people that if you're an attorney and you get given the document from a parent to sign to accept your position, read the document, have a look at it. If you have questions, take it to your own lawyer, because the more of these documents that we can make sure are valid before someone loses capacity, because if you lose capacity and you've got an invalid enduring power of attorney, it's an application to the Queensland Civil and Administrative Administrative Tribunal, or QCAT. And at the moment, it's about 9 months if it's not urgent, and even an urgent one is
Months.
not quick. So it's something quite simple as just checking the document and making sure it's valid will hopefully stop that. Making sure that there's family meetings or family discussions. I had an interesting conversation with Savannah before this with her daughter, where basically I said, you know, it should be really easy for Savannah's kids when it comes to the time if they have to make decisions. Because I imagine that she has a valid will that she's considered. She's got a valid enduring power of attorney. She's got an advanced health directive that sets out what medical procedures she does and doesn't want. She's had family discussions. She knows all the aged care providers. So I presume she said this one, not this one, not this one. She's had all of those discussions. My dad is the epitome of the opposite. He is the country farmer, she'll be right, it'll happen on the farm, probably here for the rest of my life. I don't need to think about it. So you're very lucky that that's what you've got in comparison to me.
Did you hear that? How lucky you are.
And I think also that, you know, the last comment about considering the concerns of your loved ones, because it does, you know, as Savannah said, quite often these things happen very, very quickly and is very, very stressful. So, you know, thinking through everybody's feelings. And I was giving an example to Savannah about the difference between myself and my sister. So clearly I work in a job where I talk about people losing capacity or passing away every day. I understand the hospital system. I know about aged care. My sister hates hospitals and hates making decisions. So I'm going to have to be really receptive of the fact that I know lots and she knows nothing. She doesn't like making decisions. My husband would tell you that I like making too many decisions. And I'm going to have to really consider how to, and this is going to sound harsh, how to deal with her to bring her on the journey to make sure that my parents are looked after and everything is in their best interest, but so that she feels like she's included, so that we don't end up fighting and making life for my parents difficult when we should be dealing with them.
Oh, me again.
Okay. So what is the difference between aged care and retirement living? Has anyone moved into retirement living? No? Okay. One of the first things with retirement living is it is tailored for independent living. It is self-contained units or apartments. You purchase, say, a leasehold, so you own the building but not the land. Okay, so you purchase a 99-year lease. There are very few, but there are some retirement villages that are freehold. Okay. The other point is, generally speaking, going in independently, they don't have 24/7 care. There are a few where you've got a combination of retirement and aged care, what we call a hybrid model. But they basically support your lifestyle with services and amenities, but you are required to be self-sufficient. You can bring your home care provider to your home to support your care needs, but that's where it stops at the door. Your operator is not responsible for your care needs. There are entry, which means the entry fees is what's called an ingoing contribution. The exit fee is an outgoing, and that can be anywhere from 25% to generally around 40%. However, I'm currently dealing with a family that We had to do the Centrelink paperwork for her husband. They bought in quite an affluent retirement village. Their purchase price of the unit was over $1.1 million. They opted for a 20% discount, which meant they only paid, say, $950,000, but their exit fees are now 56%. Right? That 56% comes off their purchase price of $950 minus the exit fees. It blew me away. This family will walk away with about $275,000, but the operator will on-sell their unit for over $1.2 million. So read the fine print and get legal advice before signing. So they're the two main ones, entry and exit, and then you've got maintenance fees. And that's generally called your general service charges. So that's for things like house insurance rates, so forth. The important thing with the entry, exit and maintenance fees, it's that old saying, horses for courses. This particular couple are quite affluent. Money isn't an issue. And I don't think their family are too concerned about what is going to be left. However, it is important to dot your I's and cross your T's before you sign your documents. So typically self-funded, meaning you purchase the retirement village. There are some rental retirement villages around the area as well. And some will charge a refurbishment fee on exit. Some will charge just for paint and carpets. And depending on how long you've been there, you may have to pay for the whole refurbishment of kitchen, bathrooms, tiles, you name it. So again, that will be in the contract. Now, aged care. So this is why it's important to determine where you are in your journey or your loved one's journey of care needs, because you may be better off staying in your own home and avoiding the retirement living option and waiting a little bit more and going straight to the aged care. So aged care is private or shared rooms. And some places have couple rooms. So sometimes I've placed husband and wives in a couple's room because they were both ready to go into care. You have 24/7 personal and medical care on site with RNs, personal carers, and so forth. And some of them, actually more and more, are now charging additional services for things like having a cappuccino and a piece of cake every day. You could have beer and wine with your meal. You might have two choices of hot meals. So this can be anywhere from, say, $10 a day. The most expensive that I've come across in Brisbane is an extra $75 a day for the luxury of having some of those choices. Right. And the other fees are the cost of the accommodation, meaning the room, and your care costs. So they're things like your basic daily care fee, means tested fee, and so forth. Kurt will cover those in greater detail. And depending on your level of assets, you will either be a concessional, meaning the government will partly or fully support the cost of your room, or you are self-funded. Depending on your level of assets, you will need to pay for the cost of your room. That's all right. So it's always important to seek legal and financial advice to determine what those costs might look like. Okay. So how do you get into aged care? Well, there is two ways. One being You can pay unsubsidised, and it's approximately $450 a day, which most people don't have that sort of money. So to get the subsidised respite and permanent care, you need to go through an ACAT assessment. Has anyone gone through the minefield of my aged care? How was that?
So I actually have a lot to do with it through my work anyway, but
Yeah.
absolutely dreadful.
Yeah. And unfortunately, if you live in this area, you're covered under Metro South. They were so far behind just to get an assessment anywhere from 6 to 9 months. They were then bringing assessors. I've had assessors from Mount Isa, from Cairns, because they were so far behind. So the first thing is you need to book an assessment or an appointment, or seek a referral by calling My Aged Care. You can go online and put your referral, but if you're like me, you like to express the emotions of what's going on, because you can't write how bad things are on a referral, really. I mean, you can, but I find it's much better to actually have that physical conversation. And the most important thing when you're doing your referral is don't skimp on what's happening. You need to describe the worst day.
Can I just check something?
Yep.
The ACAT assessment, is that the next step? Like when people originally just go
For a RAS?
aged care, which is to get home help or something.
Yes.
This is the next step.
Yes. So when you do the referral, they will determine whether you are needing what's called a RAS, or a regional assessment. That is for things like what's called the community home support program. So cleaning, a bit of gardening, a bit of maintenance, just your basic stuff. The problem with that is there are no vacancies. So even if you are assessed for those essential services, there are no providers that are offering those services. If they feel from that referral that you are beyond just those services of cleaning, garden maintenance, you are then referred to an ACAT assessment, which then assesses you for a level 1, 2, 3, 4 home care package. But in this case, for aged care, we are wanting the assessment for respite and permanent residential codes. And it is those codes that will enable you to get the subsidised. So I mentioned unsubsidised is $450 a day. Currently, what's today? The 20th?
Yeah.
What has it gone up from? 63.57 to 65. It is now about $65 a day. So that's why this assessment is crucial, because it enables you to get the codes to get the subsidised care. Okay. Yes, so this is where we say ensure that the real picture is expressed. I've even told clients, can you cry? I mean, yeah, cry. Just cry. Because what people don't do is, as a carer, express how it's affecting their well-being by caring for their loved one. And they feel that by sharing too much, they're making their loved one feel terrible, but it's a win-win for both, because if you don't state it as it is, you're not going to get the support that you need. Okay, so you've been assessed, then you could be waiting some time, but you generally get a letter fairly soon. If you're waiting just for the home care package codes, you're going to be waiting a long time. But if you're only requiring the ACAT assessment for respite and permanent, then generally, hopefully you can get the letter within a few weeks. If you're in a crisis, not only from a carer's perspective, but also your loved one, I highly recommend you get them into hospital. And then the ACAT can be done within that time they're in hospital. Yep. Oh, me again?
Last for you.
Oh, Lord. Okay, you're going to be sick of me. Okay, how to find the right home. All right. Has anyone done the exploration and placed a loved one into care? Yeah? Hard? And how long ago was that?
So, stay for a minute.
Yeah, it's actually gotten a lot worse. Very few vacancies, which is why I was saying before, look for the early signs so that you can make arrangements of looking at a suitable home and possibly getting them on a waiting list. But how to find the right home? Looking at what their current and their future care needs are. For example, you know, they might be suffering from Parkinson's or dementia. It might look, the picture might look very different to what it's going to look like in 12 to 18 months' time. Particularly with clients that have dementia, I highly recommend looking for a home that also has a memory support unit, because you don't know, today they may not be wandering. 6 months down the track, they may get confused and start wandering into other residents' rooms. Not intentionally, but if it becomes a reoccurring incident, then a home may request a family, if that home doesn't have a memory support or a secure unit, may ask them to move them on. So I always recommend, if your loved one has dementia or Alzheimer's, and to perhaps err on the side of caution and perhaps look for a home that also has the memory support, because you've gone through that difficult stage of finding that placement, and if you have to move them again, you're going to have to go through it all over again. All right? Personal preferences. These are really important things, like location. Your loved one might live down the Gold Coast and you live on, you know, the Bayside. Where are you going to provide the most support? Are they best to come to you, find a home closer to you, so then you can visit them more regularly than travelling down to the Gold Coast? Do they want a homely aged care home, meaning something like more like a motel style where it's low set? It's not your, when I say 5-star, I'm talking about like your Hampton style. There are lots of people that, you know, the 5-star Hampton style just wouldn't sit right with them. Understand who your loved one really is and try and match what they previously have been living in to what would suit in their new home. Financial considerations, that's really important, because there's a whole lot of fees out there that Kurt will cover. And for some people, yes, the bells and whistles may be lovely, but it's unaffordable. Okay. I recommend, even if you're not ready to place a loved one, go and have a look. It doesn't hurt to just go and tour and get a feel for what these places look like, because for many people it's quite daunting. And if you're looking in that crisis point, your emotions are at a heightened level, and sometimes you have to make decisions so quickly that you're picking a home that isn't necessarily the right home for your loved one. You're just picking a home to get them out of hospital. So go and have a look around, and if you've got the codes, get them assessed and perhaps get them on waiting lists. The thing with waiting lists, you can always decline at the time that a position comes up and keep them on the waiting list until you are ready to place your loved one. Some of the key questions to ask is things like staff ratio. How many staff are on each shift? How many RNs? Do they have clinical managers? Is their facility manager, what is their background? Are they an RN as well? What is their COVID policy. We know from past years it was horrendous, and the effect on your loved ones who were in care during a COVID had, what's the word I'm looking for? Catastrophic emotional effects. So their COVID policies are very, very different, but that is worthwhile asking, or when they have lockdowns perhaps, well, no, they don't do lockdowns anymore, but they do, say there's influenza A, they can section off wings. So find out what the ethos of the home is like, what their activities are like, those sorts of things. So, yeah, ask key questions. It is really important to just, and go and visit at different times of the day, because say 10, 11 o'clock, it's a hype of activity because that's when they do all their activities. In the afternoon, you might have a loved one that doesn't want to sleep. Well, what's there for them to do if they're not tired? Do they just have to sit around? Are there activities at all times of the day? Is there activities on the weekend? Because for some family members, if there's no activities and you can't visit them during the weekend, what are they going to do? So there's lots of things to consider when choosing the right home.
Okay, I acknowledge that this is a really emotional and difficult conversation, so I think it's important we have a quick half time. If you'd like another drink, now's the time to go up and grab one. Food, tea, coffee, toilet, or if you have any burning questions that you want to get out right now, I'll come round and pass you the mic, but I suppose we'll get some food and drink first. All right, let's get back into it. Let's talk costs. Now, I understand by getting into the numbers here, I might lose a few people, but the important thing to know is we can break up the costs when we're going into a residential aged care home into 3 categories. The first one being the accommodation cost. 2 ways to think about the accommodation cost is you can either buy the room. You'll see a term thrown around called a refundable accommodation deposit. That's the advertised room price. Now, I put an asterisk next to refundable because from the 1st of July this year, the government has made some changes, and essentially each year they take off 2% of your deposit, up to a maximum of 10% capped. The second category is the cost of ongoing care. Now, there are 2 real, you can break this up further into 2 separate items. The basic daily care fee, everybody pays this one. You can't get out of it. It's a set amount. It's 85% of the single rate of age pension. No matter who you are, you're paying this one. And then depending on the level of your income and assets, you have what's called a means tested fee. And I'm going to dive into a bit more of these in a few more slides. And like Savannah mentioned earlier, there are additional service charges, which for the most part aren't really additional. You kind of need to have these extra services when you go in. And sometimes, as Savannah did mention, I was shocked to learn that when you get the room, it's all or nothing. You don't get to opt out of some of these service charges. You are paying for Foxtel, or maybe. The way I think about the funding side of aged care is 3 C's: confusion, concern, and complexity. So I want to take a second to kind of step back and say it's okay not to get it. I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of terms here. If it doesn't stick, that's completely fine. You're still going to have a leg up on most people. And there's no guidebook to knowing any of this except real world learning and actually experiencing these terms, these costs yourselves, going through the process. If you're fortunate, I always say, if you're fortunate enough to live a long life, then you have the privilege of dealing with aged care cost. Even professionals need to continually stay up to date with this stuff. I constantly go back and look at the legislation, look at the rates. The rates are always changing. The assets and income tests are always changing. So a key point here is don't take advice from that somebody you sort of know at the barbecue who said you should gift all your money to him and then transfer the title. And no, just there's so many changing rules all the time that trust the professionals. That's why I've filled in us three here. So let's dive into the accommodation cost. And again, you can either buy the room or rent the room or do a combination of both. Really important third option is you don't have to do one or the other. If there's an advertised room price of $550,000, you don't have to pay $550,000. You'll see the word thrown around, refundable accommodation deposit, and that refers to the deposit you pay when you buy the room. On the flip side, you can choose to pay a rental style payments. It's based off that advertised room price, that RAD, okay? It's just converted into a daily payment. Now, of course, if you choose to do a combination of the both, any unpaid amount of the advertised room price gets converted into the rent style payment. So you can choose to put down, say, of 550,000, you can put down 200,000, and then you will pay rent payments off the outstanding balance. When you see this word contribution, this is the easiest way I can explain. When you see the word contribution anywhere in reference here, it actually means you've been assessed by Centrelink as a low means resident. That's not a derogatory term. It actually means you get a hell of a discount on that advertised room price because the government is going to put in sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars towards that cost. Now, you only get one shot at being assessed as a low means, and that's the date of entry into permanent care. So that's why we often, as advisors, always harp on about prior preparation and planning ahead, because once you're admitted and you've been admitted into the permanent care, you've either locked in a RAD, or if you've qualified as a low means resident, then you've locked in what's called a refundable accommodation contribution. So I've got an example in a few more slides that shows that. A few simple strategies. Qualifying as a low means you can save off about $200,000 off that advertised rent price. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to make this as interactive as possible. If you want to raise your hand along the way. Diving into the costs of the ongoing care, you've got that basic daily care fee. As I mentioned before, everybody pays this, and it's currently $23,000 a year. So that is actually 85% of the single rate age pension you get if you're a single person. From 1 July, they're adding a new charge. It's called the hoteling supplement. Terrible names. They need better marketing on these. Currently, the aged care home actually funds these costs. And the government came out and decided that the aged care industry is essentially going broke, and residents, families are going to have to fork out more to ensure the survivability of the industry. So that's one new means-tested fee that's being introduced. The service charges I mentioned are dependent on the facility, and that's one when you're chatting to Savannah or an aged care placement consultant, they will advise you on which facilities have which services, what do they charge, what do you need. It's very, very determined by the specific facility. And what was called the means-tested care fee is just changing name from 1 July again. They love to do this, the government, keeps them a job, I suppose, to the non-clinical care contribution, NCCC, which is a mouthful. And again, that's determined by your income and assets. This one I've read ceases after 4 years in care. And on both of these means tested care fees, there is daily and lifetime caps. So there is a certain point where if you've paid these fees for long enough, you won't have to pay them again. So here's a quick case study. Jane and John are 85 years old. They own their own home, and Jane will enter care. John's going to stay home. They found a place, and the advertised room price is $550,000. I won't read off their individual assets on the top box there, but have a quick read if you like. Now, on the left-hand side, I've got a before picture. If they just go into care, get admitted, and don't put any dollar down towards this room, they choose to pay the rent style payment. You can see there the RAD, refundable accommodation deposit, is $0. So we're putting nothing down. The DAP, the daily accommodation payment, this is the rent style payment, $46,000 a year. That's your rent. Yes. You get none of that back. The daily care fee, again, everybody pays this. And then there is a means tested fee just based off the level of assets that they've got up here in the top box. All in all, $70,000 a year to place Jane into care. Now, what if we structure their assets? We have a plan in place before we get to this point. I won't share what exactly they are, but they're not too complicated. They just need time and planning. We can get the assets down to a point where Jane and John qualify as low means. What this means is essentially that RAD of $550,000, the room price, has been converted to a smaller refundable accommodation contribution of $300,000. Now, there is still a little bit outstanding in this scenario. I don't have it on the screen, but imagine there's still an extra $50,000 or $20,000 unpaid. So there is still a rent, but now we've reduced it to $4,000 a year. We still have the daily care fee, and now we've reduced the means tested care fee to nil. The total annual cost has decreased to $27,000 a year. So I know this might almost sound too good to be true. However, this is a very specific case, and we see it often where you're in the sweet spot to qualify as a low means. And I also don't want to scare anyone. If your income and assets at this point in life too, by all means, you should have spent your money at 85, or your parents should have spent their money, and your assets drop to a certain level, you will be admitted. The government can fully support you.
Are you saying that they're going to pay $300,000 anyway? So would that come out of their super, or is that what you're saying you can talk about later?
Yeah, just to repeat your question so everyone can hear, you've asked if that $300,000 has come out of their super, how they've paid. Yes, in this example, I've taken that $300,000, a combination from their super, their cash and their shares. And it's really important. My job as a professional is to figure out what's important, what sort of income are you getting from your super or your shares, and what's the most efficient and effective way to adjust and fund that refundable contribution.
Just wondered what John was going to live on.
You wondered what John was going to live on. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get this right. Reference.
The money's gone from the super, the account-based pension that ceases. So
Yeah, great question.
what's John with it?
Great question. I've done this on the next slide to show you because you're right, you do have to factor in job, right? Really, really important. This one's just an example on the upfront deposit, but yeah, that is a great question. The next case study, I factored in retirement income needs.
So
Yes.
bigger than like 300,000 up front, after 7 years, and you're saving what 43,000 a year. After 7 years, it's still great. It's pretty much break even. So you're saving that 47,000 a year, but you peeled off 300, so you've chewed it up, haven't you?
Correct. So repeating the question, you've tied up $300,000 in the aged care home versus keeping it in your super and only paying the rent. So after 7 years, you've chewed it up. Yeah. This is a refundable accommodation contribution, minus the fact that the new rules state each year you lose 1%. But however, when Jane passes away, that will be coming back to the estate. So it's a great question because you have to weigh up how much return am I getting from my super, and then how much is this rent costing me, and kind of do a cost benefit analysis. And the savings of often putting down a deposit is guaranteed versus the return you might get, and I'm not making financial advice here, I'm just demonstrating. The returns you might get from your super, you have to make sure you're invested appropriately, and the returns are never guaranteed. You can't say that about anything with returns. So it's almost like paying off a mortgage. You're going to save on the interest. That's guaranteed return, saving an expense, versus getting a return on your super. Now, back to, yes, the other spouse, because they are just as important when it comes to planning. David, 79, Charlotte, 76. In this case, they own their own home again, but David will enter care. The advertised room price in this case is $750,000. Now, another new rule here in Queensland, that the aged care homes can actually list their rooms at a maximum of $750,000. It can go higher, but that is the amount that they can do without approval from the government. So we may start to see, are you seeing some prices higher than 550? It used to.
I said to Rachel, where is he finding these 550 rooms? Because they're not there anymore.
They're not there anymore. Okay, that's kind of scary, but let's work with it. Now, you'll notice an interesting point. I've put in here $52,000 a year retirement income needs. That is what Charlotte needs, $1,000 a week, because she wants to get out and be social and travel with her friends. And yes, while old David may be going into an aged care home and a change of living may be required, she can still bring him out, but she still wants to continue the same lifestyle. Now, in this case, I've put down a part refundable accommodation deposit of $400,000, and that's David's super. Charlotte said, stuff you, I don't want you to touch my super. You have to fund this yourself. So we're only going to put down $400,000 towards this. That means on that unpaid balance, there's a rent of $29,000 a year. I won't go through the daily care and the means tested fee, but there's a total annual cost of $55,000. And for the sake of brevity, once you add in the age pension and all the other little bits and pieces, that $52,000 plus these new costs, you can't meet their needs. You can't meet those income needs. If we look at another scenario where we do exactly the same deposit, $400,000 down, but this time I've included the daily accommodation payment of $0. And that's actually because you can draw down. That unpaid amount still exists, but you can draw down from the deposit you've paid. So that is an option where, yes, you're going to get less back because your deposit is decreasing year on year, but it's a way you can continue to support the cash flow needs of the spouse or even the couple. So the important note is, this is just one example. And it's just to highlight that there are options and you don't have to go all or nothing in on putting money in or not putting money in. And it really takes a holistic view of planning. But in this case, once you add an age pension again and everything else, the lifestyle income needs are met. The big ticket item is what to do with the family home. I like to begin this conversation by saying we really have two options. Do we keep and rent it out, or do we sell it? The first question to ask is, does someone actually still live here? Of course, is there someone still residing in the home? Or is there a family member that could potentially need that home? And you may see a word also thrown around called a protected person. And a protected person is essentially a spouse, a child under the age of 16, I believe it is, and anyone who's caring for. There are certain time limits, but essentially someone who has been caring for the person going into care. The second question, of course, with the house is the big one, the financial situation. What else is available? Do we need to sell it? What does it look like if we rent it out? Is that just going to be, I had a case just last week where the son came in and said, my dad's gone into care. The house is sitting there vacant. We're not renting it out. It's just sitting there because you just get paralyzed and you focus on the immediate things. And I went through the process. Well, what if we rent it out? What return? And when you get into the nitty-gritty, sometimes dealing with tenants and, you know, a rental agency at this time, at this point, can be overwhelming. But sometimes people really like to keep the family home. The last one is the Centrelink and aged care impacts. So this isn't publicly known very well anywhere, but there's actually two separate rules for Centrelink, which is your age pension or carers payment or disability support pension, and aged care. And they're different assets, and your home, for example, is treated differently under both sets of rules. So I have a really quick matrix here on the right. For example, your home age pension, your home will never affect it. It's your principal place of residence. If there is no one living in the home and you go into aged care, it remains exempt for Centrelink up to 2 years after. So you've got a bit of time. So in the example I mentioned just before, where the father moved into care, he continued to get the same level of age pension. He's got 2 years to make a decision. And I think that provides a lot of peace for people that their age pension isn't going to take a hit because they're not living in it immediately going into a home. If you go into the home and place a deposit down, that's also exempt for your age pension. So that's good because that's kind of like your new home in that case. Now, under the aged care rules, the home is only exempt if a protected person resides there. If there's no protected person residing there from the day you leave and go into aged care, there's a capped value, but it's counted as an asset, and you automatically don't qualify as a low means resident. And the refundable accommodation deposit under aged care rules is counted. So there is a lot here, and it's not your job to fully get all of this. That's why we're here, and it's so important to have the discussion. What's applicable to you and what's important to you, because what will work for you won't work for everybody else. And with that, I'll hand you over to Kimberly.
All right, I think we've had enough maths, so that's why they brought the lawyer back. Everyone's tired, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think everybody knows that estate planning is really important. I think you know you need a will. Most people have heard of an enduring power of attorney. But I'm going to give you two examples of the difference between good estate planning and estate planning. And the first one is I'm going to go back to the scenario that Kurt's just spoken about. So the principal place of residence is sold. Mum moves into aged care and then passes away. And then the family comes in to see the lawyer and has a look at the will. The principal place of residence is given to Kurt in the terms of the will, and everything else goes to Savannah. We have a problem, don't we? Because the house doesn't exist anymore as at date of death. So one gets everything and one gets nothing. So you've got a winner and a loser. And if they're both kids of mum, you most likely have a family provision application, which is really good for litigation lawyers. So they're licking their lips. And instead of Kurt and Savannah getting along and grieving and going through everything that they should be going through and with the loss of mum, they're now fighting and hate each other. Because Savannah's going, well, it was in the will. And we should follow what mum wanted. And mum wanted the principal place of residence, but it's gone. So sorry, Kurt. And Kurt's going, well, I need something to live on. I've got kids. I was banking on this inheritance. Savannah's got money already. She's wasted money too, I know. She just went to Europe and I deserve more than she does. And I'm younger than her, so I'm going to live longer. And all of a sudden they hate each other and there's a massive falling out. While if the attorney had have gone and saw the lawyer and had a discussion about the principal place of residence and potentially the will got picked up and they looked at it and saw that the principal place of residence was to be specifically gifted, they would have then recorded where the flow of that money went so that they could legally, because the attorney's done it, made sure that ultimately those funds are kept separate or recorded separately to everything else. So while Kurt doesn't get the principal place of residence, he gets whatever's left over. And yes, he still will get less. So a good estate planning lawyer at the start would have gone, all right, mum, if you're going to give the principal place of residence to Kurt and everything else to Savannah, what happens if the principal place of residence is sold? Does he get the proceeds? Or at that point in time, is everything 50-50 or something else? And maybe your client says to you, oh no, I just want the principal place of residence and everything else. But at least I have done my job of questioning whether that's a good idea, because then the next thing I'd say is you're asking for a family provision application. And therefore, all that's going to happen is a massive chunk is going to go out the door to litigation lawyers. So that's number one example. Number two is something that we're seeing more and more kind of come out over time. And this is the scenario. So if we go back to mum, mum has lost capacity. Mum's got $1 million in super. While it's sitting in her super fund, she's paying no tax on it and she's getting income and it's great. Kurt, as the attorney, gets told that mum has terminal cancer. She has 3 months to live. He's smart. Kurt, you are. He gets a second opinion and it confirms again that she is going to pass away in the next 3 months. If it's left in super, the $1 million, until mum's date of death, and then goes to Kurt and Savannah as adult children, they will pay at least 15% tax on that, if not 17.5% if it goes directly to them because of the Medicare levy. So 17.5% of $1 million gone. But if mum had a really good power of attorney and had a really good lawyer, she would have put in there that if she had that type of situation, she would allow her attorney to draw the super out while it's in pension phase into a bank account for mum. She would pay none of the 17.5%. And then when she dies, it would go tax-free to Savannah and Kurt. Why it's important that that is documented really well is that that's a clear case of it is not in mum's benefit, but it's in Kurt and Savannah's. So if Kurt is acting for mum, he has to be acting in her best interest. Her best interest is that it stays in super until she dies because she's paying less tax. So it's a clear one where it's actually only in the kid's best interest. So in the enduring power of attorney, we would have it that that's allowed. So that's two scenarios I've given you where it's the difference between just a will and just a power of attorney and actually considering through what the ramifications are and what the potential tax benefits are depending on how you structure things. I'm not going to talk anymore because as a lawyer with my personality, I could talk on this for hours and I know it's getting late and we want to open it up to questions. So sorry, this one I think is pretty clear from what we've discussed. One of the most important things is actually getting the right people around you and getting the right advice. And it's very much becoming multi-layered. You know, definitely when I started in the law, we spoke to accountants normally just to do tax returns or get copies of deeds or find out that people don't have things in place. But now I think one of the things that I'm seeing more and more is that professionals are working together to try to get the best outcome. And this is what we're seeing more and more, that we've got people like Savannah and people like Kurt, myself, the accountant that's doing the tax returns, the ACAT team, which, you know, good, bad and otherwise, and then dealing with Centrelink and all of these things working together to make sure that we're acting in everybody's best interest. Sorry. All right, questions?
Previous slide.
There is an ebook that if you actually look inside your little black bags, there's actually a little flyer in there with a QR code. So you can use that to download an ebook that Kurt's written that actually is a little bit more in depth to what we've done tonight, but it'll give you some places to find some further information further to tonight's information.
Because we can only handle so much maths on a Thursday night. Up the back. Who should you see first? Well, that's, I think, always a great question. And I think it often comes down to the most pressing. Quite often, I'll say with estate planning.
Okay, so it's not it's not old. Something's going to happen at some point. Having hard conversations.
Well, I saw a 97-year-old from Cunnamulla recently that got her first will. And I didn't know whether to praise her or be angry at her, but she was adamant she didn't need it before then. And I guess she was right because I determined she still had capacity to do an enduring power of attorney and a will. And she wasn't even very happy that she was there to do it. So I think the way I describe it is we go through a journey in life. So this morning, my first meeting this morning was with a couple who are just about to have their first child. And so they are doing their first will and their first enduring power of attorney, which bless them that they're actually doing it, because she is worried that if something happens in hospital, that the wrong people will be making decisions. And this sounds terrible, but this is the way she was thinking as to whether to save her or the baby. So that was where her mind was at this point in time with 4 weeks to go until the baby's born. So I think estate planning is a journey. If you're over 18, you should have an enduring power of attorney. And once you get your first chunky asset, I think that's a clear one for getting the will in place. The aged care placement, well, I'll let Savannah talk to it, but you know, she said that earlier that kind of happens now the better because of how long it's taking to go through that process. Financial advisors, again, I think the earlier you're doing that in your career.
2021. It's about that time.
Well, I think the last two are down it because that's really when you're getting to that point. So I think, the top, these three are when you're younger and then it morphs from there. But I think it comes down to the scenario, if I've got parents and in-laws who are in their late 60s. That will, all four, strangely, are all still working. Right? So I think they've probably done some estate planning, hopefully. Some of them have got an accountant. I couldn't even tell you if they've got a financial advisor. So for them, it's going to be a crash course at some point in time, and I know I'm going to get a phone call, whether it's my side of the family or the other side. So it really depends on the family circumstances as to where you land.
Can I just make
As I was talking before, the sooner you start planning, so if you're starting to notice your loved one is looking like they're going to need to go into care, other than having the enduring power of attorney, get your ducks in a row with your financial advisor. Because once you know how to fund that room, then I, as the placement consultant, know how to then negotiate the fees and the costs according to what you can afford. So that's how you get the ducks in a row.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'll only very briefly follow that up with retirement planning that we do from all the way from 55 on. And if you have a financial advisor, ask them this question. How have you considered the real long term of me potentially funding an aged care home into my financial plan right now? Because it may not be on paper and it may not be shown to you, but for instance, we quite often have behind the scenes, we don't just look at the now or the next 5 or 10 years. We're thinking, how are we going to preserve your assets to a point where potentially we may need a big chunk of liquid money at the end? And what does the home look like? What does the family dynamic look like? So I think it goes to that quote, most people don't plan to fail, it's just they fail to plan. Any more questions? Yes.
What are the fees associated with these services?
Each of our services? Great question. Ballpark figure. For us, we never charge for the first meeting. Our second meeting, $5.95. It gets you a discovery report on how we can help you. We quote from there, depending on how much benefit and the complexity. So I can't for certain give you a ballpark figure, because it is a range, but I'd be happy to share after this.
Does capacity come into play, like say if your parents has capacity, does it impact the ability to access these services? Or does the enduring power of attorney just step in?
Yes, the enduring power of attorney steps in. It's almost the first question I ask when I meet in an aged care meeting. I ask about the power of attorney and the family, because I need to understand who are the key decision makers, and I'm sure Kimberly, I bug her a lot. Yes.
Can you just say a few words about testamentary trusts?
Yeah, okay. So the question was testamentary trusts. So quite often in estate planning, when we're drafting wills, instead of gifting outright, and I'm going to use my 6-year-old as an example and also my sister, which I do all the time, so that's nothing new. So my sister has what I call the Ferrari factor. The money goes into the wallet and then out. And so for my parents, the thought of giving her a massive chunk of money and then watching it disappear into a vortex after the hard work, and my dad's physical labour, so for him thinking of that going, that she's wasted it, is his worst case scenario. My 6-year-old is also very much, he's just starting the pocket money journey. And he goes, all right, this is how much I need for a Lego set. And both my husband and I are pretty good at saving. So we're really kind of watching this kid going, oh no, is he going to have the Ferrari factor like my sister? And so for my sister, I would want a testamentary trust. And for my 6-year-old, I'd want a testamentary trust because I don't know what he's going to turn out like. And so what it is instead of gifting the money outright to my 6-year-old, I would set up a trust structure in my will. So it takes the will from being a couple of pages to a chunky document because it's got a trust deed in it. I would have a friend or a work colleague or a family member who I believe would be good at looking after the funds in his best interest as the trustee, and they would hold it for his benefit, potentially with no end date with him because I don't know what he's going to be like. And then I'd have a letter of wishes that said, you know, if he's 21 or 25 and he's good with money, he's responsible, he's not on drugs, alcohol, he doesn't have a partner that sees him as a dollar sign, then bring him on as a co-trustee with the thought of giving him full control at some point in time. And so what the testamentary trust is doing is instead of it going to their own name, it goes into this structure and you're protecting against, as much as we can, number one, the Ferrari factor. Number two, the child that has drug or alcohol dependency issues. Number three, either that structure or a different one for the child that's got a disability, or won't be able to manage their own funds for whatever reason. It might be anxiety, it might be not great with money because they have dyslexia, or you know, just. My sister at one point was told she'd never be able to read a newspaper, or my parents were. She's far exceeded that, but someone like that you would consider may not be great at getting a huge chunk of money. The other reasons is it's the best protection we can possibly provide if my son gets married and that relationship breaks down, to cordon off those funds that he's inherited from the funds of the relationship. And the last one is the kid that gets into business and the business goes pear-shaped or they get sued. So it's, again, providing as much protection as we can from it being in that pool of funds. As I said, it's a chunkier document in your will. It sits there dormant until you pass away, so you're not paying accounting fees or anything ongoing, and it goes from being a cheaper experience to do your estate planning to a more expensive because there's more work involved.
From a financial planning side, we really like that protection of the assets from just purely down to the fact that, you know, these days, you know, there is quite a high divorce rate, you know, seeing things like that as a protection. But also we see from an advice point of view that quite often these days a 21 or 22-year-old who used to be having kids and owning a house now aren't actually anywhere near that. So it might be closer to 30, which is quite often what we will have the discussion with our clients about, is that potentially they've got parameters around how they can use that money in the lead up to when they're responsible, however you want to put that. But there is, you know, those are what we look at from our side, you know, which is a little bit different to what you look at from your side.
And one of the things that we're seeing more and more in them, again, because of how difficult the property market is, but the risk of being in a de facto relationship and that relationship breaking down, is that these testamentary trusts, once they're established, they could loan the funds to my 6-year-old when he's older to buy into the property market, whether his principal place of residence or not, so that if he then enters into a de facto relationship that breaks down, the loan can come back into the trust and protect that capital amount. And a lot of clients like that thought, because really, I definitely feel with my 6-year-old is by the time he's at the point of trying to buy property, that's going to be his biggest challenge.
Obviously, parents, if they're going to leave their estate equal, say they have 3 children, does that include their spouses in their big son? So let's say they've been married for 20 years, 5 years, 30 years, their spouse being entitled to the same.
So you're talking about the spouses of the kids?
Yes.
So if you've received an inheritance and then you're saying then that relationship breaks down?
No, I'm saying, for instance, say my father passed away, and in his will was left to me and my two brothers, and something happened to me before Dad passed away. My husband.
No, so
It's got to be specifically written. The names have got to be. And then what happens in their case if that person decides to divorce that person?
So the normal flow of things comes down to the instructions that I get. So I'll go back and I'll pick on Kurt and Savannah again. Sorry, guys. So Mum comes in to do the estate planning and she goes to me, all right, well, everything's divided equally between Kurt and Savannah. My next question is, if Savannah predeceases you, would you want that 50% to go to Kurt or to Savannah's kids? And Mum goes, oh, that's a good question. And most times they will say to kids, but not always, due to family circumstances. If it goes then to Kurt, he would get 100%. It's rare that people will put spouses of kids in. Where I do see it is, again, if I'll pick on myself. So, what could happen is that my parents-in-law decide that if my husband predeceases them, that I might get a cash gift because they mightn't want to give me a third and the other two of my sister and my brother-in-law the other 2/3. But they might go, all right, well, we love her. She's been a long-term part of our family. So we might give her $50,000 or $100,000 as showing that she meant something to us if my husband Phil missed out on everything. It's very rare. So I've got one client that I've had for a long time, really tragic circumstances. They had a son that has already passed away, and he left behind a widow. And she is like an extension of the family. And I think even more so now than probably when they were married, and he was alive. So she is getting 1/3. But she has no family of her own. And I think it's just an extension of them. But that is quite rare. Because the law states, so if I just left everything equally to Kurt and Savannah and I didn't do a goodwill, I did a home job and I just said, all right, I appoint the two of them as the executors and gift everything to them. Savannah predeceased me. There's a section. I feel like this is your time to stop talking. You've been told you've talked too long. That's my cocktail being made. Can the back row hear me if I keep talking? All right, I'm loud. Okay. So there's a section of the Succession Act that said that if I didn't put anything in the will, Savannah's kids would get her share. And so often in a will, we'll override that because we might go, all right, well, I want $10,000 to my best friend in my will, but I'll have a section in my wills that will override that provision because it's most likely that 10 grand, if my best friend's not around, I don't want that divided between her 5 kids or something. I don't have a best friend with 5 kids, but that's, that's why we override it, to make sure that we've dealt with it. Yeah. All right. So I love my area of law because we have lots of different hats and lots of different terms. You've got an enduring power of attorney. That means it applies during someone's lifetime and when they lose capacity. You can have a general power of attorney that might be for a very specific thing. So I'm going overseas and I've got a document that I know I need signed, and I'm going to get Kurt to be my attorney for the 3 weeks I'm overseas. That's a general power of attorney. Then I've got the executor of my will. They collect the assets, pay the liabilities, distribute the estate. If they are then holding the money for my 6-year-old until he's older, they then put a new hat on called a trustee, and they would be investing those funds on his behalf until he's of age.
And then there's medical thing.
So the enduring power of attorney has 2 parts to it. There is the medical side, who you want to make your medical decisions, and who you want to make your financial. They can be one and the same, or they can be different.
It is the same.
The same document, and then you've got this other document called an Advance Health Directive,
That's the one.
and that sets out medical procedures that you do and don't want to have. And so where you've got strong opinions, or a bit like the air conditioner, one kid will think one thing and another kid will think another. An Advance Health Directive is great because it really sets out the guidelines to that family as to what you want done. And the example I always give of an Advance Health Directive is I had a crazy aunt who wanted to leave my grandmother on life support when she had advanced dementia for many years and then a complete renal failure. This was a woman who was telling everyone that she was ready to go, and my crazy aunt wanted to keep her around. Could not see beyond her own grief that it was not in anybody's best interest. And so luckily she wasn't the attorney and there was an Advance Health Directive. Any other questions, or is everyone exhausted?
And someone that's lost the custody, change their will with the help of someone overseas.
Okay, so great question. Can someone who lacks capacity change their will with the help of their attorney? No, but there is something called a statutory will. And that is where you make an application to the courts to change somebody's will. And I'll give you an example of a really, well, should I? Do people want to know the story? Yeah. Okay, so this was a bit of an interesting one, and it was a really questionable as to whether it would get over the line. Mum had gifted everything in her will directly to certain assets directly to 2 kids. She'd inherited it herself and she wanted it to go to 2 kids. She had dementia and she was in aged care, and it looked like she had about 6 months to live. One son was going through divorce. Her husband recognised that if he was still going through a divorce when Mum died, that chunk of money would end up being in his personal name and in the pool of assets to potentially be divided in a family court proceedings. So Dad made an application to the court to change the will, to put testamentary trusts in it, to segregate the inheritance from the family law proceedings. The daughter-in-law, who was going through the divorce, was trying to make an application at the same time through the family court to say that couldn't be done. And in the end, luckily, the judge for the statutory will application said, I have got to put myself in the position of this woman, and if she had capacity today, what would she do? She would change her will. We all would, wouldn't we? If we could afford it, if we had capacity, we would do it. And that's what a judge determined. So you can get one done. It's not a cheap process, of course, because you've really got to prove to that judge that if that person did have capacity, this is the change that they would make. So a lot of them don't get up because a lot of them are driven by like spite. There's been family fallouts. And family fallouts, it's very hard to then determine what mum would do. Okay, everyone's tired. Over to you, Kurt.
Okay, I'll wrap up. Okay, so thank you so much for coming out. I know it's not the most exciting topic, but I'm very grateful that that you're here. Now, I've been made aware in the goodie bag that you've got in front of you that the QR code for the ebook isn't working. So if it's not working by tomorrow, I will send everyone an email with a new link to download that one. And I'd also like to just quickly thank Rachel here and Matt and Jaden, and also the hotel for putting this on at such short notice. But look at this, we've got a bit of a, is that a pictorial? Yeah, kind of scribble.
I'll send it to you. So
It'll come out as well.
Trigger some things.
And of course, Savannah and Kimberly for your time and